Um, so here we go again. I'm Anthony Wright, and I am your co-host today on the Living Conversation
Adam Dietz, welcome back.
and we are talking with our guest, Kristan Swan. And before the break, Kristan, you were talking about your initial experience as an adult into a spiritual modality as being baptized into the Episcopal faith. And certainly the baptism is more of a dying and being reborn to
Mhm.
a new understanding. And you had this body, you had a full body experience, is that right?
Yes, it was prior to the baptism itself. It was what led me to feel like an adult baptism would be a good fit for me at this moment.
Okay.
It was sitting in a Sunday service and being receptive, I guess, or open at that moment to finally hearing and connecting with this concept of being complete and whole as I am, as we all are.
Right, right. And is that's part of what you want to bring to your clients?
Oh, very much so. I, my heart always just aches when I find myself or others, kind of doing this very external seeking for,
Oh yeah.
validation or answers I'm not saying that having different life experiences, I mean, those are very enriching. However, the extent to which we have muted our own connection with ourselves. Um, because for me, it wasn't until I got curious and took some time to know myself and begin to trust myself that I was then able to actually progress into more of what I would say is a more mature relationship with my spirituality.
In that regard, let me ask a question about the sense of self.
Yeah.
Um, Again, going back to something that our mentor worked on, I thought it was very profound because there's so many different ways to look at the self. And I think basically one way that he made it very clear and interesting, I thought, was that we are almost like a series of concentric circles.
Mhm.
That we have a psychological self, we have a physical self, and we have a spiritual self, and this kind of thing. Could you say something about one, how your sense of self has evolved through your spirituality, and two, what you've seen from your clients in regard to their sense of self?
Well, I'll start by, I love that question, and that is so interwoven in the work that I do. I mentioned earlier that storytelling is so foundational to the work that I do. And in part, I think this can can speak to what you're asking here, which is I think about storytelling in just for simplification in kind of three buckets. I think about the stories that we tell ourselves. I
Mm.
think about the stories that we have inherited or that have been told to us. And then I think about those stories that we are willing to share with others. And I know for myself that, kind of the need to pay attention to the stories that I'm telling
Mm,
myself
mm,
first and
mm,
foremost, right?
mm, mhm.
It's for me, it always starts with curiosity and and being willing to sit with those stories and say, are these still true,
Mm,
right?
mm, mm.
Or and even make peace with some of the stories that I no longer need to revisit,
Mm,
or that I can integrate in my understanding in a new way,
mm,
right?
mm,
As I've gotten older or I've had different life experiences. So I think that is that very kind of interior conversation, right? And then going to that next layer or next concentric circle, right, is that what has been kind of given to me, or sometimes, just, I didn't necessarily want it, but
yeah,
it, it's
right.
been it's been put in there, and again, getting curious with those stories. And then I think the last piece really speaks to, I know for my own evolution, is those stories that I'm willing to share with others. And obviously there's times when we can be more vulnerable, and in times where it isn't really the time to do that. But I just even think that, again, as I kind of have navigated through these layers for myself, is coming to the place where I am 100% more comfortable with sharing from my experience. And some of the experiences are not necessarily, happy stories,
Mm,
and that's okay. And those are really meaningful to share, not because I'm looking for anyone to make me feel better. I'm not, that's not what I'm asking, but I think that it's at the core of my humanity,
mm.
and living more fully into my humanity is, again, a spiritual practice for me.
Great, great. And then just to follow up, have you seen any patterns? I know you mentioned one pattern that people seem to have kind of a breakthrough, like a breaking point, or literally the saying is "come to Jesus" moment, right? Have you noticed patterns in your clients in that regard?
I have, and I also have noticed, I've had some people who participate who are still really not that curious about themselves. I mean, they love, again, sometimes, I've done that before, where I've signed up for something and it sounded like it would be good for me, and I really wasn't ready to participate yet. So I have had participants who really they're not that curious yet. And yes, I think that what I have seen in the workshops and classes is people sharing from these very honest moments of when, and most of us have a few of these, and I mean, I definitely have, and it really is from that stripping away, or that
Mm,
brokenness,
mm,
that there again is a lot of times that's where there can be that openness,
you're right.
that we can emerge, even, I'm not going to say better, because it's not about being better, but we can just emerge anew.
Yeah, in the Taoist tradition, it's a sense of emptying your mind, decreasing your
Yes.
desire, decreasing your thought, decreasing your will. It sounds like some of what you're talking about here.
Yeah.
Do you go into working with your clients with the structure of story?
Not so much, because again, there is so much, I have found there is a lot of people are very intimidated by the idea of writing. And so
Really?
they are, and I know. And I mean, if you
Because
think
they're not
about
used to it, right?
what's that?
They're not used to it.
They may not be used to it, but they may also not realize how much they write anyways. I mean, I always
Oh, right,
laugh
right, right.
because, when you think about, going to school, and there's, there's these people who are like, oh, I'm not writers. I'm going to go on more of maybe a STEM path, or I'm going to go
Right.
on, or I'm more of a creative. I'm going to go in I'm going to go in the arts. And then they they realize all of this stuff we all need to write, whether we're writing, if you're in the arts and you're writing grant proposals, or you need
Right.
to make an
Right.
artist statement, or so I feel like my kind of facilitation is really about getting people just to start, and
Oh,
not
sure.
not to worry about, don't get bogged down with you know spelling or grammar, or
Right.
even kind of thematic devices. Let's let's connect with yourself, because again, I feel like so many people have become disconnected from themselves. So we're using writing and the storytelling as the modality to get kind of reacquainted with ourselves. So
Mhm.
to to apply another level of critique on it or instruction, I feel like might kind of get in the way of at least my purpose of bringing people together.
Can I ask
Yeah.
now, as you're talking, as we're discussing more, I'm getting a sense of like, oh, we had to write our dissertation. I turned mine into a book. I'm writing another book right now. I'm writing articles. And as you're talking and I'm kind of sifting through what you're talking about, I'm like, oh man, writing really is a spiritual practice for me. And it's like when it's one of my most connected moments besides my Tai Chi practice is writing and reflecting on these things. And then I realized, okay, the things that I've been thinking about and contemplating and mulling over, processing, so to speak, to
Mhm.
be able to really clearly put them on the page and address certain issues in a certain way is really profound for me as you're describing that. Is that part of the goal of what you're working towards?
Yeah, for sure. Well, I mean, one of my kind of my gateway into a lot of my work is I have a journal that I put together many, many years ago. It was kind of a seed that came out of my business coaching. It's called Spaghetti on the Wall, and
Oh,
again, it's recommended as a daily practice of
mm,
uh really kind of just it has prompts in it, so there's some structure to it. Again, I'm always about, I want to make things as simple and as accessible as
great,
possible,
great.
right?
Yeah.
Because it's too easy to get intimidated,
Mm.
or to feel like, oh, it's going to take too long. So I mean, I have this journal that the way I recommend it is 15 12 minutes a day. I mean, set a
Wow.
timer, do it, the timer goes off, throw your pen against the wall and move on with your day. But I do find that, and especially, I just feel like it's so needed in this time that we're in right now, where, you know, put your pen to paper. And that's another thing, is right, that very physical
Oh,
act of, as opposed to typing.
mm,
Oh,
And
yeah. It's a very different thing
it's a very different
with the
thing.
hand
So,
thing.
so much of, so the in class, stuff is all handwritten, because we agree to leave devices at the door for the sake of the class. And it's just so that quiet that happens when you allow yourself, and whether you write for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 12 minutes, whatever it is, it's such a gift, I feel like, that
Yeah.
we can give ourselves.
We have to take a
mm.
short break. I'm Anthony Wright, and I'm your host today with my co-host.
Adam Dietz, thanks for joining.
And we're here with our guest, Kristan Swan. How can people contact you?
KristanSwan.com is the best place to find out all about what's going on.
And your name is Kristan
I know.
Swan.com. All right, we're going to take a short break and be right back. So stay tuned. I'm Anthony Wright, and I am your co-host today on the Living Conversation with,
Adam Dietz, welcome back.
and we're here with our guest, Kristan Swan. And before the break, Kristan, you were talking about a journal that you called Spaghetti on the Wall, and I wanted to reflect that I had a difficult personal time when I was in my early 30s, and I began to keep a journal at that time and have kept one ever since. And I find it to be one of the most useful tools that I can recommend to people
Yeah.
because you can write stuff down and kind of go back and go, oh, that's where I was, and here's what I'm having. Oh, and that's how that relates. And kind of again, this exercise that Peter Elbow talks about in timed writing, you kind of empty out your head, and
Hmm.
then you kind of go, oh, now all this clutter is gone. What is this here that's here that seems to be now uh, being an inspiring thing?
Yeah.
And I'm kind of getting that. Is that what you're wanting your clients to do?
Yeah, I recommend I sell the journal on my website and I use it daily myself.
Uh-huh.
And when I initially conceived of my journal, and I always, as a little kid, even I had the diaries with the
Oh,
little
cool.
lock on them that was very easy to break into. I didn't have siblings, so I wasn't worried about anyone reading my diary. But
But
I,
what an
you know,
interesting thing to have your awareness about where you were then as a
yeah,
kid.
but it is also, I mean, I think also why I'm so sensitive to having encouraging people to write
Oh, yeah.
is that while I was doing a diary and journaling kind of for as long as I can remember, and it's always been, I mean, sometimes it's fits and starts, right? I mean, it hasn't been this perfect journey of journaling, but is I don't know in terms of writing anything that I was willing to share to other people, that took a while for me. And so I actually had to kind of go through different creative um, modalities and mediums before I was confident enough kind of to find my voice, essentially. So, I mean, I have a background in fine art,
Oh, okay.
um, photography, printmaking, you know, collage, painting. That was very much a way to express myself when I wasn't necessarily trusting that I was adept enough to that my words were going to convey what I meant. And it took a while for me to get there. So I think that that informs both the way that I set up my journal, which allows people to journal. I call it kind of in a part of the prompt is to write about. I write each morning, so I'm really writing about the day past.
Right.
Uh, and I'm writing about the day past through the eyes of the non-judgmental observer. And
I,
then,
I really like this idea of word painting. That
ah,
seems to be like what you're doing. Is that right?
yes, yeah. And so I'm doing this non-judgmental observer journaling and documenting. And then the next part of the journal really asks you, it's called the experience evaluator, and it asks you to pull kind of those yeses out of the day, right? What were some bright spots? And they don't have to be, big mouth. I mean, it's not like it's got to be a fireworks show every day, but just even noticing, I mean, sometimes for me, it can be being able to take a walk and I got to, see some birds or something. I mean,
Right, right.
it can be these small, but just kind of noticing what are those genuine life affirming moments in your day. And then the other part of the experience evaluator is noticing those moments where I call it the not so much, which is like, oof, that's just not really that. And I like to call it not so much because I don't, it's like we don't need to make it bad. And it doesn't mean that it is not the right fit
Yeah.
forever. It just means, yesterday, you know, waiting until I was so hungry to eat and because I was waiting for all these other people because I was trying to people please them because
Oh,
this
yeah.
that was a not so much. So and again, that's a little tiny examples, but it could be a bigger thing. And so just noticing, and again, I think what I'm trying to get at in this this journal format is like get to know who you are and honor yourself,
Mm,
because I feel like there's this I haven't quite figured out the perfect equation form of it, but it's like, the constant has to be this curiosity, right? And then you get this knowing about yourself and trusting in yourself, and then you can do less harm. You
mm,
can do less harm to yourself, and by extension, less harm to others by
mm,
making choices that are actually yours
mm,
and that are in alignment with the person that you know yourself to be and want to be, and how you want to engage with the
mm.
world.
That's great. That's great. Do we have time, Anthony?
Yes,
Okay. So I
absolutely.
just wanted to say, I love what you're saying, and it's really inspiring to me, and it makes me reflect more on my own journey, especially over the past year. As many of our listeners know, our philosophy department was totally cut, and the day I turned in grades, I decided I had been working on a manuscript for a while, but and on that note, I will say that it was very helpful for me actually. I was ever since my dissertation many years ago, I knew and committed I wanted to write more, but I
Mhm.
couldn't. I had little kids for one thing.
Yeah.
So sometimes you kind of beat yourself up a little bit. But I will say that something very strange happened where we talk so much about technology. I ended up writing on my phone.
Oh, yeah.
So once we found out we were getting laid off almost a year ago to the day, I
Yeah.
said, that's it. I'm inspired to write the class that I taught because I taught it in such a
Mm.
way that it was a story. So I
Yeah.
wrote the class I taught, like writing what you know, right?
Yeah.
And the biggest way for me to get it out was wake up in the morning when I'm in bed still and start almost type like a whole chapter on my phone.
Yeah.
So I just want to say that I wanted to mention that because I feel like for our listeners, for our audience, that
Yes.
if you can write any way you want and write anything you want. Anthony and I are both have a side hustle. Like I'm a part-time soccer coach. Anthony's a piano tuner. If I wanted to write about coaching soccer and the different kids I've met along the way and that kind of thing, then that's really a good start. So
Oh,
write
yeah.
what you know and go ahead and get started. And I just wanted to say like you're inspiring me to think of it in those terms. So I hope that that kind of piggybacks off your work.
Oh, absolutely. And I write and post weekly on Substack, and there's all these great formats, right, to share. And who knows how many people actually read it, but
Yeah, I know
I
that.
write for myself, and I write about what I'm thinking about in the moment, kind of a few days earlier, and I'll go in and clean it up and put a photo with it that I've taken that means something to me. And I love that. And I love that I finally am in a place of giving myself permission to do something like that, and to also that there are these places that we can gather, and it's virtually, but that we can gather our kind of collective
Mm,
creativity,
mm.
because that is energetically, that's so just it's so ripe with possibility.
Great.
Yeah. And it seems like um, just making that space for that to happen
Mhm.
becomes something that offers tremendous permission. Um, One of the things, and we're coming up on a short break here, but I'm I'm a along with Adam, I'm a philosophy scholar, doctoral level philosophy scholar that's going through a business program.
Mhm.
And boy, has that been a different experience. So I would be very interested to know what it is that you bring to your business clients in how, because business is all, it seems to me so far that business is all about counting stuff. And it's linear and about, well, okay, I have to have this and I have to be able to be accountable to the people who are investing, and we're going to determine about whether this is a worthy project or not by counting and seeing how soon it's going to mature and do these mathematical things. But it's all about counting stuff. But what about the humanity, And
Yeah.
um, I think some of that, and that's one of the things that I want to bring to my writing after I am done with the program, uh, to bring a bit more about how do we bring more humanity into our daily life rather than just being locked into this um, limited dimension of uh, business.
Yeah.
So just a quick mention of that, and then we'll take a short break and come back. So, what are your directions in a couple minutes that we have before the break?
Yeah, that's not a short topic, but I will say I love the idea of thinking differently or thinking uh, maybe not differently is the right word, but expanding our thinking or our understanding around business. Because I really do think when you talk about existential crises, that
Right,
capitalism is our existential crises in a way. Much more, I mean, and interwoven with that is climate and
right.
other social justice
Absolutely.
issues. But
Okay.
I think we can dive in a little bit.
All right. Well, we'll take a short break and be right back. I'm Anthony Wright, and I'm your co-host today on the Living Conversation
Adam Dietz, thanks for
and we're
joining.
here with our guest, Kristan Swan. And how can people contact you, Kristan?
Please find me at my website, kristanswan.com. And it is Kristan, Kristan, kristanswan.com, all one
Great.
word.
All right. We'll take a short break and be right back. So stay tuned. I'm Anthony Wright. I'm your co-host today on the Living Conversation
Adam Dietz, welcome back.
and we are talking tonight or today with our guest, Kristan Swan. And before the break, I had asked you a question that needs to be kind of unpacked more about um, how to bring humanity, and how do you work with your business clients with the writing practice that you do?
Well, I have for the most part, I've really uh, moved exclusively into the work that I do now with workshops and retreats. So my
Uh-huh.
practice at this moment is still very much about small group facilitation. However, I I come from a very, I mean, this is my own business that I do this, and I
Yep.
also have always been highly entrepreneurial. I didn't know
Mm.
that's what it was when I was, 11 years old and knocking on my neighbor's doors because I knew that they were going away or had just gotten a dog or something. And I saw an
Opportunity.
opportunity to provide a solution for them.
Right, right.
And I love, I mean, the how I ended up becoming a business coach is because I had either worked in small independent businesses for most of my career or had my own business. And it was funny what I realized is I wasn't really that tied to a specific industry. I was more tied to the idea of I loved creating businesses because really what I loved is I loved supporting kind of other people being successful. And
Away from
and
a corporation, and because that can be really scary for some folks.
yeah, I didn't end up ever working for a corporation.
Yeah,
But and most of my business coaching clients were, because of the world I was in, were independent business owners. And so people who were the business founders and owners, and so helping them kind of grow with their business, because I think that there's, kind of these different mindsets that we need to adopt at different stages of our business's life. Uh, but back to your original question around that humanity piece, I think that it is so, I think that there is a need to be very clear about the desired outcome of whatever endeavor you are embarking on, right? And within that is embedded that mission statement.
right.
And that being a real North Star, so to speak, um, as the business evolves. And kind of, because a mission statement, a well-crafted mission statement is one that is very different from kind of your kind of yearly vision for the
Mhm.
business. It's very foundational to what you are creating, and as something that's foundational is going to be that bedrock that you're able to grow upon.
And
So
would you say that's like a value structure?
it, in part, it is values. I mean, a lot of times when working with clients, we would talk about kind of mission, vision, and values. I think
Oh, okay.
so. I think that your values and examining what those are is key to crafting the mission statement, but not necessarily kind of the mission statement is more about kind of your naming who you are and what you do and kind of why. Whereas
Oh,
and
right.
those are supported around those values, and the values are going to be really important as you are thinking about your presence, your outward facing presence with the world, right? So as you get into kind of brand development, so to speak, but your values are also first and foremost going to be so important for that internal structure and culture.
Yeah, there's an author named Simon Sinek who talks about
Yeah.
getting to why,
Yep.
and but also my being that I'm doing this business degree, I'm looking at business ethics.
Right.
And well, what's that? And that's also about how.
Mm-hmm.
And I really appreciate part of what the reflective process is in the journal writing is we get to notice our own how. Would you say that's true?
Yeah, I would say that's true. And I think that is kind of what I'm also suggesting as your the naming of the desired outcome, right? And just, I mean, in a very simple way, to illustrate what I'm talking about is, for instance, if you and all three of us are we're in a company together, and we need to have a meeting, and we're gonna have sandwiches, or we're gonna have lunch together for our meeting, right? And so the desired outcome is that we have a meeting where we have some food so that we're not getting hangry, right? Um, but how we do that is there's a whole bunch of different ways. I mean, we might decide that we're all going to get sandwiches, right? So even if I say I'm going to be the person that runs out and gets those versus Adam, like I may decide to walk there because I have enough time and I can take a call. So that's the how of how I'm getting. Whereas you're
Mhm.
like, okay, I've got this much time and I'm gonna look at the map and I'm gonna optimize my route and I'm gonna
Right,
hop on my bike and go this way. And Anthony, if at the last minute we had to get you to get the sandwiches, you might have to hop in the car. So
right.
there's and so then looking at all those different ways, all those different hows to get those sandwiches, is there is there a way within our three hows that is more in alignment with the value structure
Mhm.
of what we are doing? If
What everyone
we,
has agreed to do, right? Yeah.
yeah, I mean, if we're all about if we're just optimizing and we're all about fast, 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 then maybe, maybe actually the bike is the fastest way because you don't have to worry about parking and you're not going to get in, you can kind of wiggle through some of those traffic lights. Um, but maybe maybe we're kind of doing the slow food version of whatever. So the walking part is actually part of our company ethos, right? That we can be walking and taking calls at the same time. So that's kind of a tiny example of kind of how that lived experience.
That's really interesting because I also feel like it comes down to how we are as people.
Hmm.
How do we interact? And I'm writing an article that's coming out next month in Big Think Business about 9 Confucian steps for emotional intelligence in the workplace. And it's all about how you are. If you're angry, you should be circumspect. When someone's saying something to you, you need to hear it clearly. So there's 9 different ways to relate how to be in the office place. I feel like we overlook that part of how are we um, practicing our humanity? How are we maintaining harmony in all our different fields? And sometimes the desired outcome or the company goal or whatnot can really be jumbled up and torn asunder by disharmony in the workplace. I think this
Hmm.
also relates to, and Confucian values is always about how that manifests in the family. So
All right.
I think talking about how we are as human beings, how we respond to things, really is important in every place that we go to. So when we're talking about how are we choosing to walk? Are we choosing to ride a bike? Are we choosing to take the car? I think we can also look at that like how are we choosing to promote harmony in the workplace? Are we
Hmm.
choosing to be egotistical and just take everything we can? I think these are important hows and it relates to your work with the spirituality, right?
Yeah. Well, I love that, Adam, and that really highlights too, I think the beauty and the gift to myself with working primarily with independent business owners is, and part of the reason why I was inspired to make spaghetti on the wall when
Mm,
I was deep in this work was how there wasn't, this construct of our professional persona and our personal persona as being these very, distinct boxes within ourselves is it's just, it's just that. It's just a construct.
Right.
And
Right.
that to recognize our, again, kind of going back to one of our earlier conversations, the wholeness of ourselves. And so the and 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 embracing that in our teams too. And I think
mm,
there's an interesting phenomenon as uh that I've seen both in smaller businesses and larger businesses where people are hired and they get hired for the qualities that they have, right? When you're interviewing, you're just, you're all about your different strengths and all the things that you do well, and you get hired for that, and hopefully you really get hired for your attitude. So, again, you get hired for that. And then there can be a sometimes there can be this thing where we can kind of lose those pieces of ourselves in order to in some ways we're doing this because we think it's the way towards harmony within the organization. And I think and I don't necessarily have the answer, but I think a really interesting point of tension is how do you create that culture within your organization that is still really celebrating those beautiful individual characteristics of these people, as well as bringing that harmony that you're talking about.
Oh
And
yeah,
making
nice.
a blend there. So,
Yeah.
well, we're coming to the end of the interview. If there was one thing you'd like our listeners to know about your work, what would that be?
Oh, well, my work is I'm not here to change people. I am here to really hopefully offer some simple, accessible tools to get to know yourself better and to trust yourself and be more at ease with yourself and hopefully, embrace your whole complete wonderfulness.
Mm.
Great. Well, thank you for being with us. I'm Anthony Wright, and I'm your co-host today on the Living Conversation with,
Adam Dietz, thanks for
and
joining everyone.
we've been here with our guest, Kristan Swan. And how can people contact you, Kristan?
Please take a look at kristanswan.com. That is my website, and Kristan is Kristan.
Great. Well, thanks for being here, and we will see you next time.